Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast. I'm Brian David Johnson, the author of the Science Fiction Prototyping column in the IEEE Computer Magazine. And today is going to be an interesting podcast for me. It is January. It's the new year. It's January 2016. And I took January as a time to, as many of us do, to look backwards and look forwards when it comes to science fiction prototyping. And I've really just been overwhelmed by the responses that we've gotten, both from this podcast and the column, and science fiction prototyping in general. We've been very lucky to have many different guest columnists this year, really interesting people who are doing really interesting work. And science fiction prototyping has really started to take on a life of its own. It's not only used with engineers and designers, but now there are economists and business leaders, there's linguists, there's all sorts of people who are using the process. And it's just been amazing to see, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the coming year. But also, I have to say that as I've been thinking about science fiction prototyping and science fiction in general, I mean, science fiction has a power to it. As we've always said, that science fiction gives us a language to talk about the future, and science fiction prototyping is science fiction based on science facts, so we can start having conversations about real possible futures. But even though science fiction can be an incredibly powerful genre and a powerful medium for imagining the future, it also can turn people away with quite a bit of power as well. There are a lot of people who, just across the board, don't really like science fiction, are really simply turned off even by the genre itself, and wouldn't even admit that they had seen or had watched or had liked a science fiction movie, although all you do have to do is look at the stats and realize that, I think it's many of the top 10, certainly over 5 of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time are science fiction movies. So I was thinking about science fiction and thinking that, ultimately what science fiction is it gives us stories about the future. Certainly science fiction prototyping gives us stories about the future based on science fact, but science fiction prototyping, it gives us stories about the future. And that's one of the things that I've learned as a futurist, is that how you change the future is you change the story that people tell themselves about the future that they will live in. And certainly science fiction does that, but I've been searching for something else, something that could be broader, something that could broaden the reach of this visioning of the future. And I hit upon the American Dream. It was a personal project of mine that I had started thinking about, that the American Dream allows us, not just Americans, but it allows many people to imagine what their future could be, to imagine what it would mean to them. And for decades and decades, the American Dream has driven people and inspired people, and there's been many different American dreams. And so that's why, as I go into this new year, I realized that I could no longer be a corporate futurist. As many of you know, I was appointed the first futurist at the Intel Corporation, and to really pursue this and to have conversations with people about what's the future of the American Dream, I realized that I had to leave my corporate futurist job. And so, starting in January in 2016, I have left Intel and am working on this project, going around the world and asking people, what's the future of the American Dream? And realizing that it's a really interesting time to be doing this, because in America, this is an election year. We will be electing a new president in November of this year and inaugurating that president in just a year from now, in January of 2017. And so I'm embarking on this project of asking people what's the future of the American Dream, realizing that inherently it is a flawed question. It is a question that can never be answered. You can never actually fully answer what's the future of the American Dream, but the only way you can get it less wrong is to talk to more people. Every single person I talk to means I get closer to getting it right, to getting the answer right, but I'll never be 100% right. And so I invite you all. We've had wonderful responses to this column and to this podcast, that please, if you have an opinion about the future of the American Dream, that you can email me at bdj.futurist@gmail.com and tell me what do you think is the future of the American dream? Also, as a part of this, to do this research, I'm proud to announce that I will be the futurist in residence at Arizona State University. I will be sitting in their Center for Science and the Imagination. Many of you will remember that Ed Finn, who is the founder and the director of that center, was one of our guest authors back in 2015. So I will be working with the Center for Science and the Imagination to continue my research, to continue my work as a futurist, and certainly working with that center will give me lots of access, will give me access to many people doing work in science fiction prototyping, and I'm sure much of that work will actually show up in this column. I'm also pleased that I'm going to be partnering with many other universities, so not only working at Arizona State University, I will be a professor of practice at ASU. I'll be in a new school that they've created called the School for the Future of Innovation in Society. And I'll be teaching a class in What's the Future of the American Dream. And all of this will be driven to a website called futureoftheamericandream.com, where we'll continue to chronicle this and have these really essential conversations about what are we imagining for the future of America. But I'm not just stopping there. We're going to continue. We're going to be working with Iowa State University and Ames, Iowa, talking to the future farmers of America, as well as the future big data scientists, and many, many more. I've been completely overjoyed with the interest and passion that people have brought to this project. And it really was those conversations, the reason why I felt that I needed to leave Intel. Intel is a great company and been there for over a decade, so my time there has been amazing. But the conversations that I need to have around the future of the American dream could get quite prickly. They could get quite uncomfortable. And certainly the time is right, with it being an election year, to go and do that. So that's my big announcement. That's what's in store for the future of this futurist in 2016. As always, if you have any ideas for science fiction prototypes, for science fiction prototyping, or if you have some ideas and opinion about the future of the American dream, please, you can always get in touch with me at bdj.futurist@gmail.com, as well as you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at bdjfuturist. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I look forward to 2016. It's going to be a really exciting and interesting year, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.